Chosen one, I need you to anchor your spirit firmly to the words I am about to speak. There is a quiet, profound shift occurring deep within your soul right now, a transition so internal and so complex that you find it impossible to explain to those around you. Stop trying to silence that voice. Stop trying to ignore the change. The enemy is working overtime in this hour for one reason, and one reason only. He clearly sees the monument of strength being built inside of you. And he is terrified. He knows the people in your life are about to witness it too. In this season, everything is shifting. The period of isolation you've endured, the constant sting of being misunderstood, that lingering sensation that no one truly sees you the way they used to. None of this is happening by accident. It is reaching its conclusion, not because of a lucky break, but because of the fire you have walked through. Think back to that specific moment, earlier this week when you made the conscious choice to remain silent, instead of exhausting your energy trying to explain your heart to someone who had already committed to misunderstanding you. You simply turned and walked away. Perhaps you felt foolish in that moment. Maybe you replayed that scene 100 times in your mind, wondering if you should have defended yourself. You didn't realize it then, but that decision was not an act of defeat. That was refinement in its purest form. You didn't lose any ground that day. You gained altitude. You rose above the noise. Something has fundamentally shifted in the atmosphere surrounding your life. Even those closest to you cannot quite put their finger on it. They are drawn to your energy in a different way now. They find themselves looking at you a moment too long, sensing a weight and a depth they can't explain. They come to you with burdens and secrets they never used to share, leaving you standing there puzzled, wondering why this is happening. You don't feel like you've done anything spectacular. In fact, you feel like you've just been barely surviving. But that is exactly the point. You didn't find this video by chance. A random algorithm didn't bring this to your screen. This was a divine appointment, orchestrated and written into your path long before you ever pressed play. You are standing at the very edge of an understanding that is going to revolutionize the way you view every difficult season you have ever endured. I urge you to stay until the very end. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly what is being constructed beneath the surface of your life. I am going to provide you with a spiritual audit that explains why people are responding to you differently, even when nothing on the outside seems to have changed. And before we finish, I am going to give you a powerful declaration, a seal that will lock in this transformation and permanently close the door on the version of you that used to shrink back in fear. Do not click away. Your future self is pleading with you to stay in this moment, because if you leave now, you will miss the precise second where confusion is traded for absolute clarity. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like for you. The world around you hasn't just been quiet. It's been strange. It feels as though you are moving through your daily routine, but something heavy and significant has moved underneath it all, and you can't yet give it a name. Perhaps you caught a glimpse of yourself in the mirror this week and noticed something in your eyes had changed. Not a physical change, but something behind them. A new depth, a new resolve. Or maybe someone approached you this week, someone who usually ignores you, and the way they spoke was softer, more hesitant, as if they were suddenly aware of a presence in you they had missed before. Or maybe you sat in total solitude and felt a quiet, undeniable realization. The version of you that used to crave everyone's approval is simply gone. The absence of that need felt like a strange mix of absolute freedom and a subtle sense of grief. You are becoming someone new, but no one around you has the vocabulary to describe who that person is yet. And it is in this exact gap that the enemy has begun to whisper a very specific, dangerous lie. Listen to your thoughts right now. He is trying to convince you that what you are feeling is actually arrogance. He is telling you that you are pulling away from people out of pride, and that you're calling it growth, when you're really just becoming distant and difficult. He keeps replaying that moment when someone said you've changed, and they didn't mean it as a compliment. He is using their confusion as evidence against your progress. He wants you to believe that real transformation must be invisible and small, and that if people are noticing you, something must be wrong. The accuser is telling you to shrink back down to a size that makes everyone else comfortable. But you must hear what the word actually says. Proverbs 4:18 declares, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter until the full light of day." Notice that promise, ever brighter, not dimmer, not more hidden, not more apologetic. God does not refine you so that you can disappear into the shadows. He refines you so that the light inside you finally has no walls to hide behind. The light never apologizes for the darkness it displaces. It just shines. The enemy wants you to view your growth as a red flag, He wants you to retreat into smallness because smallness is something he can manage. But an awakened, refined, God-shaped chosen one is a threat he cannot handle. This shift isn't you becoming cold or proud. It is you becoming undeniable. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of failure. It is the weight of completion. People are confused because they have never seen someone being reconstructed from the inside out before. You thought the silence and the moments where you chose peace over being right were failures of connection. But let me reframe your reality. Those were the moments where the deepest work was done. Every time you chose refinement over reaction. Every time you let someone misread you rather than performing for their applause. Those were the acts that changed the very atmosphere of the room when you walk into it. You are not starting over. You are not broken. You are being made more. And the world is feeling it before you even believe it. This message is the activation of what your spirit already knows. This is precisely the sequence of events that unfolded with the prophet Elijah. After the jaw-dropping miracle of fire on Mount Carmel, picture the scene in your mind. The roaring flames consuming the drenched sacrifice. The cries of absolute awe from the massive crowd. The sudden and dramatic defeat of the false prophets. And that palpable shift in the spiritual atmosphere as the heavens finally cracked open, ending the drought with torrents of rain. Elijah had just witnessed the most undeniable and earth-shattering demonstration of divine power in his entire generation. He had boldly called down heaven, and heaven had answered with an unassailable display of glory. The false gods were utterly disgraced. The devastating drought, a symbol of spiritual barrenness, was decisively broken. Yet merely 40 days later, a blink of an eye after such cosmic triumph, this mighty prophet, the man who stood against an empire, was found sitting beneath a solitary broom tree in the wilderness. He was utterly alone, desolate, and so profoundly weary that he told God he simply wanted to die. His plea for death was not born of failure. It didn't come from a setback or a spiritual defeat. It was because he had succeeded beyond measure. He had achieved the unimaginable, and paradoxically, he felt absolutely nothing but an overwhelming emptiness. The atmosphere on the other side of his greatest victory was not a jubilant celebration or the embrace of grateful crowds. It was a deafening silence. It was crushing isolation. It was the terrifying, echoing question of what comes next. When you have been used by God so completely that the very fabric of your being feels stretched thin, leaving you hollowed out and unrecognizable to yourself. He had poured out everything. And in the aftermath, he found himself adrift in an ocean of unfulfilled expectations and spiritual exhaustion. And here is what God, in his infinite wisdom and boundless compassion, said to Elijah in that raw moment of despair. He did not issue a sharp rebuke. He didn't condescendingly remind him of the fire from the sky. Instead, with a tenderness that pierces through the ages, he simply said, "Get up and eat, because the journey ahead is too great for you." Mark those words carefully. The journey ahead is too great for you. Not the journey behind. Not the battles you've already won. The divine focus was entirely on the path that lay forward. This profound instruction is precisely what is being spoken into the depths of your soul right now. Get up. Rise from the dust of your weariness and the shadow of your self-doubt. Do not rise because you suddenly have all the answers, but because the next chapter of your divine assignment requires a version of you that has been abundantly fed, spiritually, emotionally, prophetically. It demands a soul that is replenished. You cannot step into your next chapter running on empty, trying to draw sustenance from the ghosts of who you used to be. But here is where this truth goes infinitely deeper, a nuance that most people entirely miss. The profound disorientation you feel right now, that sense of not knowing where you belong, is not a sign that you are lost. On the contrary, it is an undeniable sign that you have outgrown the old map. The familiar coordinates that once guided you no longer apply because you are no longer in the same territory. You have advanced. The old strategies, the people-pleasing that eroded your boundaries, the exhaustive over-explaining, and the habitual shrinking, they have all stopped working. And they stopped working by design. God has deliberately removed those tools from your hands. This is not a punishment. It is a divine promotion. The elevated, authentic person he is building cannot carry those old, heavy things into the uncharted territories where he is taking you. They would only hinder your flight. Think of it like this. When you move into a grand new home, you don't bring your broken, worn-out furniture. You prune. You release. You declutter to make room for the new. Yet so many people spend decades trying to drag the wreckage of their old seasons into their vibrant new ones. They wonder why the new room feels small. or why the blessing they prayed for feels suffocating. The blessing is never the problem. The problem is the mental clutter and emotional debris you've stubbornly chosen to bring into it. What feels like emptiness or a void from the outside is actually purposeful clearance. God is not creating a vacuum for no reason. He is intentionally clearing the floor, space of your inner world to establish something so grand it simply could not have fit within the confines of your old self. This next revelation will challenge your entire paradigm. For far too long, you've operated under the unspoken belief that you are not yet ready. It's a phantom narrative whispering that the empowered version of you is still a distant figure on the horizon. This belief keeps you in a perpetual waiting room, treating your life like a temporary transit lounge while you wait for the real thing to begin. You have been living in a constant state of postponement, convinced that your true self is always just beyond the next corner. But consider this. What if the real thing has already begun? What if this very moment, this season of stripping away, of questioning, of intense internal labor, is not a mere prelude, but the grand commencement of your calling? What if the refining fire you've endured was not just a means to an end, but in its purest form was the ministry itself? What if the quiet, arduous, and often lonely way you navigated the last hard season, the deafening silence where God seemed absent, the courageous choice to value inner peace over external performance, was the profound assignment God specifically entrusted to you? Your hidden years were not wasted. They were invested by divine design. There is a monumental truth embedded in the book of Exodus that most people read right past. When Moses, a fugitive shepherd after 40 years of obscurity, finally encountered the burning bush, God did not immediately launch into the mission. He didn't start with, "Go tell Pharaoh to let my people go." Instead, he started with his own identity. He declared, "I am who I am." Before Moses could comprehend the mission, he had to understand the identity of the one sending him. God understood that you cannot carry the weight of a divine assignment if you are not first anchored to the unshakable identity of the one who called you. After 40 grinding years in the wilderness, after every worldly title and human ambition had been painstakingly stripped away, Moses was finally ready to hold the sacred weight of a nation's destiny. 40 years. Let that sink in. Not 40 days, but 4 decades of what felt like a bewildering detour. In truth, it was a meticulous formation. It was a season of unlearning and character sculpting. Your unique timeline, the winding paths and the frustrating U-turns, is not a detour from your destiny. It is a necessary formation, orchestrated by the divine architect to chisel and equip you for the purpose that now beckons. This brings us to the shifting landscape of the people in your life. These relational changes are neither cosmetic nor coincidental. They are integral to your elevation. When God reshapes a spirit, the people around them are compelled to respond. It is a spiritual law. Some will lean in, drawn to your new light. Others will pull back, uncomfortable with the boundaries you are establishing. Some may even become quietly hostile, disturbed by the reflection of their own stagnancy in your growth. For too long, you have misread these responses as evidence of your own flaws. But the reaction of others is not a referendum on your worth. It is a revelation of where they are in their own journey. It is a liberating truth. Some people were never divinely intended to cross into this expansive new season with you. This isn't because they are bad people, it's because their character was only written for specific chapters of your story, and they have now played their part. Releasing them is not a betrayal. It is an act of profound obedience. From heaven's vantage point, this is not loss. It is divine alignment. Think of Elisha. He had to watch his mentor, Elijah, be taken up in a whirlwind before he could pick up the mantle. The double portion of power didn't come from clinging to the old. It came through the painful act of releasing. Only in the void left by the old could the new anointing begin. What are you still holding on to with an anxious grip that was meant to be surrendered? What must you set free so that a greater blessing can finally fall? Coming up next, we will uncover the hidden weight, the unspoken burden, operating beneath the surface of your perceived delay. This is the pivotal moment where the door to your breakthrough swings wide open. Sometimes the most cunning strategy of the enemy is to come at you through your own story, the narrative you tell yourself. He allows you to rehearse the script of your wounds and past traumas with such vivid detail that those moments of pain cease to be mere events you experienced. Instead, they tragically become your very identity. They stop being a testimony of God's redemptive power and start being your core definition. I implore you to understand, there is a life-altering difference between these two states. A testimony declares with power, I went through this experience, and by the grace of God, He brought me out. A testimony is fixed on a present and future God. An identity, however, subtly whispers, I am the person this devastating thing happened to. It is a self-definition, rooted in the trauma itself, not in your deliverance from it. One positions you for a future teeming with possibility. The other anchors you immovably to a past that seeks to limit your entire existence. And here is the unsettling truth. You can be committed to daily prayer and present in every worship service, and still be unconsciously living from a wound-based identity. This deception is sophisticated. It hides behind a veneer of false humility, making it sound spiritual to constantly refer to your brokenness. It disguises itself as authenticity, telling you that clinging to your suffering is essential to stay grateful. In reality, it is effectively keeping you small, bound, and held back from the fullness of your calling. Even the disciples struggled with this. They found themselves huddled in an upper room behind locked doors, not because they lacked faith in God's power, but because they were defining themselves through the lens of what had been brutally taken from them. The locked room was a spiritual prison. And then, in a moment that shatters all limitations, the risen Christ walked effortlessly through those locked doors. He didn't come to rebuke them. He came to lovingly breathe on them. And in that sacred breath, every wound-based narrative was instantaneously replaced with something entirely new. He said, receive the Holy Spirit. He didn't tell them to remember their training. He simply said, receive. Because receiving requires you to open and unlock what you have been fearfully keeping hidden. It demands a surrender, an unclenching of the fists of control. So I must ask you directly, what have you been keeping locked away? The vast majority of you are not struggling with unbelief in God. You believe He is powerful. You believe He moves for other people. The agonizing chasm you cannot seem to bridge is the conviction that it is for you. You fear that in your brokenness, you don't qualify. And so you find yourself orbiting your breakthrough, hovering at the edges of your destiny, without ever stepping in. You watch others cross the threshold, and you rationalize it as God's timing, when what you truly mean is, not for someone like me. Allow this truth to land with the force of divine authority. That agonizing gap is not humility. That gap is the actual battlefield. That is where the war for your life and identity is being fought right now. It is not a war over your finances. It is a war over your self-conception. The enemy does not need to steal your destiny if he can persuasively convince you to leave it unclaimed. He does not need to destroy your future if he can simply make you feel perpetually unqualified for it. Let me declare a truth over you right now. You are not unqualified. You have been meticulously trained, not in a pristine classroom, but through the very seasons of your life that you are most ashamed of. Those messy, painful years you try to hide. Those are your true credentials. Those crucibles of fire forged a resilience in you that cannot be cracked. They gave you a compassion that doesn't recoil at someone else's worst moments. You didn't just survive. You gained a spiritual intuition that was painstakingly forged, one hard decision at a time. This wisdom is a divine qualification that uniquely equips you for the work ahead. The thing that has been blocking your ascension is not the enemy's assignment. It is your own unconscious unwillingness to unapologetically inhabit who you already are. You've been waiting for external permission. You've been waiting for a sign. So let me be that authoritative voice for you right now. It is real. That magnetic pull toward greatness is not arrogance. It is destiny knocking. That holy discontent you feel is not pride. It is the Spirit of God, refusing to be contained by the smallness of your past. God does not call the finished. He finishes the called. Now place your hand on your chest and say this with me. I release the version of me that needed permission to take up space. I release the narrative that my wounds disqualify me. I release the identity built on what was done to me. And I receive the identity written over me before the foundation of the world. I am not behind. I am not broken. I am being made. I step forward not because I have it all together, but because I trust the one who does. My next chapter does not require my perfection. It requires my presence. I am fully here, and I am not shrinking again. If you felt a shift just now, do not dismiss it. That resonance is your spirit recognizing a divine decree. What you need now is not more information, but daily reinforcement. The enemy is counting on you walking away and returning to your old thought patterns by morning. He wants to suffocate this truth before it can bloom. You were created with intention. You were refined by the fire, and now you are born to motivate. Don't let the world dim the light that God just set ablaze in your soul. If this message was the activation you've been waiting for, let us know by leaving a yes in the comments and subscribing to the family. Step into your next chapter with your head held high. I'm proud of you. I'll see you in the next video.